Chapter 14. Erica squinted through the darkness to the clock on her bedroom wall. 2:03. She pulled herself up in bed and lowered her feet to the floor. Staring at the clock, she stretched and listened to the silence. The house was dark and still. I'm the only one awake, Erica told herself unhappily. Her father was still away on his business trip. Her mother had returned from a party at the neighbor's house at about 11:30 and had gone right to bed. Mom is sleeping peacefully, Erica thought. She's such a sound sleeper. She doesn't know that it's after 2 in the morning and Josie isn't home. I'm the only one who's awake. With a groan, she stood up and untwisted her nightshirt. Then she made her way across the dark room to her desk, the floorboards creaking under the thin carpet. She clicked on the desk lamp, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the bright white light. Leaning on the edge of the desk, she reached for the phone directory. She dropped the directory on the desk, then flipped quickly through the B's until she found Barron. Steve's phone number had been underlined in red ink, probably by Josie. Keeping her finger on the number, Erica glanced up at the clock. She sighed and punched Steve's number, leaning against the old oak desk as she waited for the ring. "Hello?" Steve answered halfway through the third ring, his voice hoarse with sleep. "Steve," Erica whispered. "Uh-huh. Who's this?" Erica started to reply, then heard a loud clunk. "Sorry," Steve said after a few seconds. "Dropped the phone." "Were you asleep? It's Erica." "Huh? Erica?" Steve said the name as if he'd never heard it before. "Yeah, I was asleep. Steve, I'm so worried," Erica told him, her voice revealing her fear. "Josie isn't home." The line was silent for a long moment. "Not home," Steve replied finally, sounding alert. "What time is it?" "It's after 2, Erica told him. "It is." He sounded very surprised. "But Josie should have been home hours ago." "I don't understand," Erica said, starting to sound more than a little frantic. "Wasn't she with you? Didn't you bring her home?" "We had a fight," Steve replied, speaking rapidly in a low, steady voice. "You what?" "We had a stupid argument," Steve repeated. "It was really dumb, about skates or something. I don't even remember what started it." "And what happened?" Erica asked, lowering herself into her desk chair. Her hand gripped the receiver so tightly it began to ache. "Well, Josie left," he told her reluctantly. "By herself?" Erica cried in alarm. "No, Steve answered quickly, sounding very defensive. "She left with a whole bunch of kids." He cleared his throat loudly, then continued. "We were all at the rink together. After we had that dumb argument, Josie left with them, with the others." He cleared his throat again. "But she should have been home a few hours ago, Erica." "I know," Erica said unhappily. "Do you think?" Steve started. "Oh, wait," Erica interrupted. "That's the front doorbell. That might be Josie. Bye." Erica hung up the receiver without waiting for Steve's reply. Then she hurriedly padded down the front stairs in the darkness, her bare feet making the stairway groan and creak. Eagerly, she turned the lock and, using both hands, pulled open the front door. "Josie?" she cried. Chapter 15. Erica uttered a silent gasp. She blinked, trying to force her eyes to adjust to the harsh yellow porch light. It wasn't Josie. Standing grim-faced on the other side of the glass storm door were 2 dark-uniformed police officers. Erica recognized them immediately. They were the same men, the young-looking redhead and the older one, bald in front, with a wide salt-and-pepper mustache, who had come to their house after Muggy had been killed. They gazed in at her, their features set, their eyes narrowed. Erica pushed open the storm door with a trembling hand. Is everything okay?" she asked haltingly. She could tell by their expressions that everything wasn't okay. "Are your mother and father home?" the older one asked somberly. "My dad is away," Erica told him, her voice trembling. "But I can call my mom." Suddenly chilled, she held the glass door open for them. The 2 police officers stepped inside quickly, silently. They seemed to bring the cold in with them. To Erica, the room temperature dived to below 0. The older one pulled the storm door shut. His partner removed his cap and nervously scratched his curly red hair. Erica turned and was startled to see her mother already behind her in the hall. Mrs. McLean was struggling to tie the belt of her robe with trembling hands. "Erica?" she asked, her voice still choked with sleep. "What's going on?" I'm afraid I have some very bad news, the older police officer said softly. Mrs. McLean gasped and reached out to grab the banister with her right hand to steady herself. About Josie? Where is she? She isn't home? Erica shook her head no and shut her eyes. There's no other way to say this but to say it, the officer said in a low, steady voice. He took a deep breath. Mrs. McLean, your daughter has been murdered. Mrs. McLean uttered a shrill shriek. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the floor of the hall. No! As she landed, she let out a piercing wail that sounded more animal than human. The two officers lunged forward to help her. She landed hard, straight down on her knees, still wailing. Not Josie. Please, not Josie. How did it happen? How do you know? How do you know it's Josie? The questions poured out of Erica in a desperate voice she didn't recognize. Who did it? How do you know? What if... The red-haired officer helped the sobbing Mrs. McLean to her feet. Not Josie. Please, not Josie, she kept repeating, enormous tears running down her quivering cheeks. We found your sister in the alley behind the ice rink, the older police officer told Erica, speaking in a low professional voice. We identified her by her wallet. She hadn't been robbed. She was dead when we arrived. She had been stabbed in the back with the blade of an ice skate. The skate was still in her back. Oh, Erica moaned. She stared wide-eyed at the grim-faced man for a long while. Then her eyes rolled up in her head. Her knees bent and she crumpled in a heap to the floor. The older officer bent quickly to help her. No, no, please no, Mrs. McLean was still screaming. Ma'am, do you have a family doctor? The red-haired officer asked, holding on to her shoulder. Perhaps the doctor could come out and... He stopped in mid-sentence, startled as another figure floated down the stairway. Rachel emerged from the shadows wearing a long, flowing white nightgown, her hair down over her shoulders. Somebody hates Josie, Rachel declared in a bright sing-song voice. She had an eerie smile on her face. Somebody really hates you, Josie. Still leaning over the unconscious Erica, the older policeman's expression darkened. What? What did you say? He called suspiciously up to Rachel. Somebody hates Josie, Rachel repeated, smiling, her green eyes sparkling in the hall light. Huh? The two officers glanced quizzically at each other. Ignore poor Rachel, Mrs. McLean told them through her tears, shaking her head sadly. Just ignore her. She doesn't know what she's saying. The next morning, Sunday morning, Melissa had planned to sleep late, but she was startled awake by her mother's voice calling from downstairs. Melissa, phone! Huh? Melissa muttered, slowly raising her head from the warmth of her pillow. Phone, Melissa! Melissa pulled herself up and rubbed her eyes. She struggled to focus on the clock radio, only 8:30. Hey, Mom, why'd you wake me? Why didn't you tell them to call me back? It's Dave, Mrs. Davis shouted patiently. I wouldn't have awakened you, but he said it was important. Dave? What could Dave possibly want at 8:30 on a Sunday morning? This better be good, Melissa thought, yawning. She picked up the phone extension on her bedside table. Hello? Dave? Hi, Melissa. Dave? What's the matter? Melissa asked with concern. You don't sound good. Melissa, I've got to talk to you. Right away, Dave said breathlessly. I'm in terrible trouble. Chapter 16. Melissa pulled on jeans and a sweater and hurried to The Corner, the small coffee shop near Shadyside High. Dave was already in a booth in the back when she arrived. He was wearing a faded blue denim work shirt with the collar turned up. He was tapping the tabletop nervously with a blade from his Swiss Army knife. He looked up as Melissa slid in across from him, but didn't smile. His small, dark eyes were red-rimmed and tired-looking, Melissa noticed. His long, black hair was unbrushed. Hi, she said tentatively. You look terrible. Did you hear about Josie? He folded up the knife and set it down on the white Formica tabletop. He nodded. Yeah, I just heard it on the news. I can't believe it, Melissa exclaimed. I mean, I just saw Josie on Friday, and now, this morning... The waitress, a short young woman with frizzy orange hair, stepped up to the table and set down 2 water glasses. You need menus? They shook their heads and ordered omelets and fries. It's so horrible, Melissa continued after the waitress had walked away. I haven't been to their house yet, but my mom called over there, and they're all in shock. Dave shook his head, but didn't say anything. He slid the red-handled knife back and forth across the table from hand to hand. They sat in silence for a while. I mean, Murdered, Melissa said, shuddering at the thought of it. It can't be. She took a sip of water. Dave remained silent, continuing to slide the knife, his eyes on the table. Melissa sighed. I heard the police are questioning Steve, she said. That's what I have to talk to you about, Dave said with sudden urgency. He closed his left hand over the knife and held it in place on the table. Huh? Melissa stared at him, bewildered. I don't know how to say it, Dave said uncomfortably, his dark eyes burning into hers. You know something about the murder? Melissa stammered. Listen to me, Dave said heatedly. Just listen. I did a stupid thing. A very stupid thing. He stopped to take a deep breath. Dave? Melissa started reluctantly. Did you? Who gets the one with extra cheese? The waitress interrupted, balancing the tray of dishes on her hip. As the waitress set the omelets and fries down, talking all the while, Melissa stared across the table at Dave. She felt a heavy dread moving up from the pit of her stomach. What was Dave starting to tell her? He looked so guilty, so frightened. How horrible was the secret he was about to reveal? The waitress finally finished and, slapping the tray against the side of her uniform, headed up toward the front. Dave stared down at his food, but he didn't begin to eat it. His eyes darted nervously around the small restaurant, as if making sure no one was listening. Dave, what are you trying to tell me? Melissa asked. The smell of the grease was starting to make her feel sick. Or was it the tension? Dave cleared his throat nervously. I did a really stupid thing, he repeated, avoiding her stare. I sent Josie some Valentines. Melissa's mouth dropped open. Is that all? She asked herself, feeling a little relieved. Valentines? To Josie? She asked, her high-pitched voice revealing surprise. But what's the big deal? You don't get it, Dave said, frowning. Melissa saw that beads of perspiration had broken out across his forehead. I sent her special Valentines. It was so stupid I can't believe I did it. I knew you were still hung up on her, Melissa said, allowing some anger to creep into her voice. No, wait. I wrote things on the Valentines I sent her, Dave confessed, blushing. What kind of things? Melissa demanded, feeling sick. She shoved the french fries away from under her nose. Well, Dave hesitated. Then he let it all out in a burst of words. I wrote rhymes on the cards. I crossed out the words that were there and wrote my own rhymes. I said she was going to die on Valentine's Day. Huh? Again, Dave glanced quickly, nervously around the restaurant. It was deserted except for an elderly couple having scrambled eggs at the counter. It was supposed to be a joke. I was so angry at Josie. I hated her so much, Dave said, struggling to explain, searching for every word, his face still bright red. I don't know why I did it, really. It was stupid. Tapping his fingers nervously on the tabletop, he looked away. Melissa took a deep breath. His words seemed to be swimming around in her mind, bobbing around, not making any sense. You sent her death threats? She asked. No, Dave answered heatedly. Well, yes. I mean, not real ones. It was a joke. I wasn't serious, but... Is everything okay? The waitress asked, appearing beside the table once again. Can I bring you anything else? We, haven't started yet, Melissa told her, glancing down at the untouched food. Well, I can't eat it for you, the waitress joked, and headed back toward the kitchen, laughing uproariously. So, you sent Josie cards saying she was going to die on Valentine's Day? Melissa asked, still trying to comprehend what had happened. Did you sign them? No, Dave snapped. No way, but don't you see, Melissa? I sent the cards, and then she was killed on Valentine's Day. Oh, no, Melissa gasped. When the police see the cards, they'll think you killed Josie. Dave nodded in agreement, but didn't speak. Staring across the table at him, sick and frightened and confused all at once, Melissa felt a sudden chill, a chill of suspicion. Dave, she said, staring hard at him, her voice a low whisper. Dave, tell me, you didn't kill her, did you? Chapter 17. Dave stared back intently at Melissa. He didn't reply. As she waited for him to say something, she studied his eyes. His eyes, she knew, would reveal the answer more truthfully than his words. What did she see in them? Guilt? Anger? Fear? I didn't kill Josie, Dave said finally in a flat, exasperated tone. How can you ask me a question like that? I had to ask, Melissa told him, still searching for the answer in his dark, narrowed eyes. Listen, I hated her enough to send the threatening cards, Dave said, leaning over the table and lowering his voice. But I didn't hate her enough to kill her. Are you lying? Melissa wondered, studying him. No, you're telling the truth, aren't you? She wanted so desperately for him to be telling the truth. I got the idea last winter, Dave started to explain. When Josie's dad suddenly called and said I couldn't work in his stores over Christmas vacation, I knew Josie was behind it. My Christmas was ruined. I was so angry. I wanted to pay her back. I got the idea to send her a Christmas card with some kind of warning on it. Melissa shook her head. I don't believe this. You were going out with me, but you were still hung up on Josie. She struggled to keep her jealous feelings down. Josie was dead, even though she couldn't believe it. No way, Dave insisted. Don't say I was hung up on Josie. I hated her. Really. So you sent her a threatening Christmas card. No, I didn't get it together to send the Christmas card. I got busy and forgot about it. Then when Josie didn't get off my case, I don't know. I guess I just lost it. I sent her 2 threatening Valentines. Then, after the cheating thing happened in math class, I sent her more. And now Josie's dead, and my writing is all over the cards, and the police are going to think... His voice trailed off. Melissa stared down at the food on the table, probably cold by now. Her mind whirred without focusing. She wanted to yell and scream at Dave and tell him how stupid he'd been, but she also wanted to say something helpful, something encouraging. He was terrified. He needed her help. But what could she do? I just wanted to scare her a little, that's all, Dave said, tapping the fork rapidly against the side of his plate. It was just a dumb joke. Where did you go after you left my house last night? Melissa asked. Did you go straight home? Were your parents up? Did they see you? Dave shook his head, frowning. I left your house a little after 10, right? Then I just cruised around for a couple of hours. I guess I was feeling restless. I don't know. I just drove around. I didn't get home till nearly 1. My parents were asleep. So you have no alibi? Melissa asked, swallowing hard, her throat dry and tight. You're starting to sound like some kind of cop show on TV, Dave snapped. I'm just trying to help, Melissa cried. Dave poked the omelet with his fork. Some cheese oozed out. He kept tapping the plate, avoiding her stare. Raising her eyes to the front of the small coffee shop, Melissa saw 2 kids she knew from school enter. She watched them, hoping they wouldn't take a booth nearby. She breathed a sigh of relief when they took the booth closest to the front window, out of hearing range. Hey, what makes you think Josie kept those Valentines? Melissa asked, brightening a bit. Huh? Dave dropped the fork to the table. Yeah, Melissa said with growing enthusiasm for the idea. I bet she threw them out. Why would she keep them? I don't think I'd keep them if I got them. Dave thought about it for a moment. I'll bet she showed them to Erica, he said glumly. He put his elbows on the table and cradled his head in his hands. I'll bet Erica saw them all. She'll tell the police. But Dave... Maybe Erica's already shown them to the police, he muttered. Maybe the police are already looking for me. Erica hasn't talked to the police, Melissa told him. Erica is in shock or something. I told you my mom called over there this morning. Their doctor answered. He said that Erica and Mrs. McLean both had to have medication, to help them sleep. I guess Erica fainted. Then when they revived her, she went totally ballistic. Then maybe I have a chance, Dave said, picking up his head, his expression thoughtful. What do you mean? Melissa asked. A chance? He didn't answer. She could see that he was thinking hard, concentrating. What are you thinking? She demanded impatiently. Maybe I can get the cards back, Dave told her. What? How? I'll sneak into the McLean's house and get them. Melissa stared at him, frowning in disbelief. Are you crazy? How are you going to get in? What are you going to tell them when they see you pawing through Josie's things? I really don't think... No, wait a minute, Dave said, putting a hand over Melissa's. I'm not going to do it while they're home. But I just told you, Melissa insisted. Erica and her mother are both... The funeral will be tomorrow, right? Dave interrupted, his dark eyes glowing with excitement. Yeah, I guess. Well, they'll all be at the funeral, Dave explained. The house will be empty. I'll sneak into the house, grab the Valentines, and get out. Melissa locked her eyes on his. Do you really think you can? Sure, Dave assured her. What could go wrong? Chapter 18. Dave parked his car at the corner and sat staring down Fear Street, the engine still running. Even though it was just past 11 in the morning, the sky was black. Large raindrops, one every few seconds, splattered on the windshield. The low, dark clouds promised a heavy storm. The old oaks and maples and birches that bordered the street bent low, as if cowering from the storm. Their bare branches shivered on the swooping wind. Dave cut the car engine. He reached for the door handle. Now or never, he thought. He took a deep breath and pushed the car door open. Dead brown leaves swirled at his feet as if trying to push him back into the car. But he stood up, slammed the car door, and hurried quickly toward the tall hedge just beyond the curb. A large raindrop hit his forehead, and the cold water ran down his nose. Keeping low against the hedge, he made his way toward the McLean's house in the middle of the block. This was supposed to be easy, he thought, ducking behind a tall evergreen shrub as a red van slowly passed, its headlights cutting through the morning darkness. It was supposed to be easy, so why was his heart pounding like a bass drum, and why were his legs so weak he could barely walk? Another raindrop splattered the shoulder of his leather jacket. He bent low, eyes to the street, and moved past another yard, trying to jog, but slipping on some wet leaves. He stopped near the McLean's driveway. The house loomed in front of him like a giant dark creature. 2 upstairs windows stared at him like unfriendly eyes. No cars in the drive, he saw, no lights on in the house. They were all at the funeral. Half of Shadyside was probably at the funeral, Dave thought. Even the school had been closed so that Josie's friends could attend. Dave turned his gaze across the street. Melissa's house was dark, too. Darkness everywhere. He took a deep breath and held it, trying to slow his racing heart. Then, shoving his hands deep into his jeans pockets, he leaned forward into the cold wind and made his way quickly up the rain-spattered asphalt drive. I'll be in and out of there in no time, he told himself. I'll grab the valentines and split. Piece of cake. He knew he was giving himself a pep talk. He didn't care. He needed all the encouragement he could get, even if it came from himself. He was only a few yards from the house now, approaching the flagstone walk that led to the front porch. A loud crash at the side of the house made him cry out and leap into the air. He spun around, prepared to run. Then he saw the metal garbage can roll on its side across the driveway. The wind had toppled it. Wow! He exhaled loudly, shaking his head. This was supposed to be easy. Easy! The rain started to come down harder. Squinting through the large drops, he examined the house. A small rectangular basement window at ground level was partway open. If worst came to worst, he figured, he could probably squeeze through it. But he wanted to try the doors first. Maybe he'd get lucky. Maybe the McLeans had left one of them unlocked. Should he try the front or the back? He hesitated, a heavy, sick feeling in the pit of his stomach. He hadn't eaten any breakfast. He'd been too nervous. Maybe that had been a mistake. His stomach growled as if warning him away. Despite the rain and the cold swirling winds, he realized he was sweating. His hands were cold and wet. Which door? Front or back? Don't just stand here in the driveway waiting for someone to come by and see you, he scolded himself. He decided to try the front door. He was so close to it after all. He climbed the wooden steps. His legs felt as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. What was that sound? It took him a few seconds to realize it was his own breathing. He pulled open the storm door. He reached for the brass knob with a trembling hand. He turned it and pushed. The door swung open. I don't believe it, he thought, scrambling inside. He pushed the door shut behind him and leaned back against it, waiting to catch his breath. I'm inside, just like that. The front hallway was dark, dark as night, silent as a tomb. I'm in. Now what? He struggled to think clearly. He wished he could turn on a light. He wished his heart would stop pounding. Got to get upstairs, he told himself, to Josie's room. Calm. Calm. There's plenty of time. The funeral is just beginning. The funeral. Funeral. The word sounded so strange. Stop stalling, he scolded himself. Get upstairs. He pushed himself away from the doorway. He took a step in the dark, narrow hallway. Then another. A grandfather clock ticked noisily. Hey! What hit his knee? Squinting, he saw the wooden umbrella stand. Give me a break, he muttered, his voice sounding tiny and hollow in the empty darkness. He was nearly to the front stairway when he heard the intercom. Dave stopped right in front of the box on the wall. Had it just clicked on? No. It must have been left on. He moved his ear close to the small round speaker. Crackling sounds. Just static. Empty static. Or was it? Dave listened carefully. Was that breathing? Was someone breathing into it? No. Yes? Hello? Anyone there? He called into it, bringing his mouth right up to the box. No reply. He listened. He couldn't tell if he heard breathing or just a normal crackling and static. Anyone there? He said again. Silence. Exhaling loudly, he made his way up the stairs, each step creaking under his weight. He stepped onto the landing, his hand reluctant to let go of the banister. It was even darker up there. He knew which bedroom was Josie's. He had visited her there once when she was sick, back when they were going together. The floor groaned beneath him as he walked quickly into her room. Rain drummed noisily against the bedroom window as if trying to break in. The bed was neatly made, an old teddy bear on the pillow, as if waiting for Josie to return. A neatly folded stack of freshly laundered clothes was piled on a chair beside the window. Dave sighed. This is definitely creepy, he thought. Josie was here 2 days ago. Now she'll never be here again. He made his way to the old oak desk in the corner. Leaning over the desk chair, he started to search the desktop with both hands. Got to find the cards and get out of here, he said out loud, his voice a trembling whisper. A strong gust of wind made the old windows rattle. The entire house seemed to shudder in reply. I hate these old houses, he thought, feeling his panic rise, choking him. I hate Fear Street, and I hate these old houses. I hate the rain, and I hate the wind, and I hate... Where are they? He asked himself aloud. He pushed aside a stack of school papers. He searched through another pile of notebooks and binders. No, not here. But they must be here. They have to be. A wave of nausea swept over him. He stopped searching, swallowed hard. Where are they? Not on the desk. Of course they're not. She would never keep them out. She probably shoved them into a drawer. He grabbed the drawer handle, pulled so hard he almost pulled the entire drawer out of the desk. Calm down. Calm down. He repeated the words over and over, but it didn't seem to help. Where are they? He riffled frantically through the contents of the drawer. No, not here. Then where? Where? He shoved the drawer back into the desk, his hands trembling, his breath coming in loud gasps. He dropped down onto his knees and peered under the bed. Nothing there but dust. What was that sound? A car? A car door slamming? I've got to get out, he muttered out loud, in a shrill, quivering voice he didn't recognize. Out. Got to get out. He'd failed. He couldn't find them. Now someone was coming. He had to get out, and fast. His heart pounding, he climbed to his feet and lurched to the doorway. In the dark, narrow landing, he turned toward the stairs. Halfway to the stairs, he stopped short and cried out in shock and horror. Chapter 19. Swirling reds. Puddles and pools. Blood red. Shimmering and rolling, spinning around him. And behind the angry spills of color, Dave's scream, a hideous animal wail. Of horror. Of anger. The scream refused to fade. The red pools refused to disappear. The scream continued to echo until it was replaced by new sounds. A rumble at first. Thunder? No, too close to be thunder. And too human. Footsteps, Dave realized. The rumble and creak of footsteps on the stairs. Heavy footsteps, moving closer. Rapidly moving closer. The two officers ran up the stairs and burst into the hallway. One of them reached for the light switch. The overhead light clicked on, a white sunburst, an explosion of light. Hey, you! The two officers moved quickly across the landing. One of them reached for his pistol. Drop it, the other one yelled to Dave. Dave stared at the blood-covered letter opener gripped so tightly in his hand, the red flowing onto the silver. Drop it, now, the policeman barked. Dave leaned over the girl. He stared at the bloody wound in her side, stared at the puddle of blood at his feet. Erica. The girl was Erica. He huddled over Erica, staring at the stab wound. The blood-red swirls floated angrily in Dave's eyes, blinding him, suffocating him. So much blood. Poor Erica. Such a big red wound, and so much blood. Puddles and pools. Such an angry, angry red. Why was Erica here? Why were the police here? Why wouldn't the red pools go away? Dave whirled around. He started to stand up. Stop it right there, son, the officer said, tensing the arm that held the pistol aimed at Dave. Drop the knife and don't move. You're in a lot of trouble.